Most squirrel videos exploit squirrel climbing agility for entertainment purposes, provided by people like me who really just wanted to feed some birds. Like the others, this video is intended to provide whatever entertainment value one can extract from watching slow-motion failures of squirrels trying to defeat our seed security system. However, it is also a tribute to the squirrel you see munching away on our black oil sunflower seeds. In decades, this is the only squirrel that has figured out a way to get seeds out of this feeder. Hundreds, spread over generations of squirrels, have tried and failed, but this little guy has it figured out. Others would occasionally find a seed stuck outside the trough, but none figured out how to reliably get seeds directly from the feeder. The baffle is designed to keep squirrels and raccoons from just walking up and helping themselves. The middle pipe reduces climbing traction, and there is nowhere to go when they reach the top, where they're actually inside the baffle. For the occasional jumpers that make it to the top of the metal feeder roof is literally a slippery slope. If they get almost there, they find the trough, guarded by a balanced gate that closes seed access to heavy birds, squirrels, and raccoons. No, I'm not opposed to feeding the larger birds, but the others waste enough seed that falls down to the deck or ground to help the larger birds and animals enjoy the free banquet also. Initially, the metal pipe was attached directly to the deck railing that made feeding time easy, but it also resulted in a world record level of bird droppings and seed hulls on the deck, in addition to easy access by occasional raccoons. So I got the bright idea to cantilever it out away from the deck on a pivot that allowed the feeder to come back to the deck for refilling, but kept most of the droppings and hulls away from the deck otherwise. This resulting apparatus was intended to be a proof of concept effort to help refine a future design. It functions so well that I never got around to the cosmetic improvements. For one thing, I need something that tree-dwelling rodents won't chew or scratch the paint off of. The plastic pipe wasn't as rigid as I had hoped, and I added the chain and a turnbuckle to help square it. Not entirely successful, but structurally sound. By using really small chain, access to the feeder above the baffle wasn't compromised, well, until now, and actually added to the circus aspects of squirrel watching from our dining room. Let's see that again in slow motion. First, he learned to climb the chain, but was smart enough not to end up under the baffle. Later, he refined his technique to skip the chain. He hits the baffle with enough momentum to slide under the feeder, and then grabs the gate with one paw to avoid the inevitable fall as gravity rotates his body 90 degrees. He's learned not to lean on the gate because it goes closed, and he can't get seeds then. However, he needs to hang on to something, and he apparently gets his claws into the trough behind the gate. Of course, there is no way for him to just levitate even his small body and hang suspended, so he uses his rear feet to help reduce the load on his front limbs. Note that he is constantly trying to walk up the curved outer surface of the baffle with his rear feet. The baffle is plastic, and I suspect years of exposure to sunlight have roughened the surface just enough for him to get a snack before he gets tired and needs a rest.
The other squirrels have learned enough from this little guy's successes to launch unprecedented and unsuccessful assaults on the feeder. I don't know how many squirrels there are. I didn't duplicate any of the failures. Each one is at least an original attempt by an individual squirrel who may not mind falling. Here are some of the best attempts that failed compared to the genius of one squirrel. It had to happen. Two squirrels at once. Note that the one on the left is our little genius, while the other one is leaning on the gate. However, the baffle was challenging enough without the other bozo moving it. A little game of spin the baffle.
Game over? Maybe. Since the old baffle seemed to be the weak link in our seed defense approach, we have replaced the old one with a slightly different design. Remember that the old one was dome-shaped, and the squirrels exploited the flattened portion at the top to reach the feeder. However, only one ever figured out what to do once they reached the feeder gate. For the others, just reaching the gate seemed to be the goal, but even then only a few got that far. The baffle's steel with a hammered finish and steep sides all around. I would have preferred one made out of polished stainless steel with a coefficient of friction rivaling the surface of an ice rink. However, that was the best I could do. Here's a photo of the label that came on the new baffle, and I will put a link in the description. Note that the one we use is 18 inches in diameter, but there is also a less expensive 14-inch version that might work as well. Okay. I didn't pay much attention to the feeder for a few days after installing the new baffle. The advertisement on the internet said it was squirrel and raccoon proof, and, based on my observations of how the other dome was exploited by one squirrel, I felt confident I had won the battle.
Imagine my surprise when Sandy called me to come look at the feeder to find the little genius munching away like he owned the feeder. We didn't see how he got into position to start with, but his technique of skating on the steep sides of the baffle while not hanging on the gate seemed to work even better than with the old baffle. Eventually he got tired and jumped back to the deck, and I started watching to capture a future approach on video. Here is the approach in slow motion. First, he launches himself toward the apex of the baffle with enough momentum to allow him to reach the apex with his right rear foot, where he establishes an anchor point that allows the front of his body to slip slightly down and away from the feeder. Then, he uses the left front and back legs to gain traction on the baffle while he reaches beneath the gate with his right front leg. He quickly pulls his front leg out and grabs over the gate without hanging on the gate like all the others who got as far as the feeder. If you watch his tail, you will see that it eventually slides far enough downhill to expose his right rear foot hanging onto the apex of the baffle. Now he doesn't have to skate on the side of the baffle, and he can have both front legs free to get seeds. New baffle actually made it easier for him to get seeds, and I didn't see that coming.
To be fair, the baffle manufacturer may have envisioned a longer pole with the baffle farther from the feeder. I'm tempted to remove the baffle altogether, but then the raccoon has a better shot at both the seed feeder and the soot feeder. Perhaps the squirrel has earned a few seeds, but not the raccoon.